Tomorrow, 115 cardinals begin the sanctified and secret process of electing the next pope.
The future of the Catholic Church might just rest on one man's shoulders. Pope Francis has spilled the beans about Cardinal Luis Tagle, the rising persona who could shake things up at the Vatican. From his humble beginnings in the Philippines to becoming a major player on the world stage, Cardinal Tagle has everyone talking. Could he be the next pope? And why did Pope Francis choose now to let this cat out of the bag? Grab a comfy seat and stick around. We've got the inside scoop. The Pope and Cardinal Tagle's shared vision. Pope Francis and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's partnership is all about humility, compassion, and making the church feel more modern and in touch with today's world. Seriously, these two are out here changing the game. First off, let's talk about Cardinal Tagle. Pope Francis has been super strategic with his appointments. Back in 2019, he made Tagle one of the pro-prefects of the dicastery for evangelization. Basically, Tagle is in charge of spreading the Catholic faith around the world. This role is huge, especially since it focuses on areas like Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Tagle is the former Archbishop of Manila, and let's be real, he's been a rock star in spreading the faith for a long time. So this appointment, it's a major win for Pope Francis's vision of a church that's all about reaching people, not just sitting in the Vatican. But wait, there's more. Fast forward to 2021, and Pope Francis gives Tagle another massive role. This time, he's in charge of the Vatican's central bank. Yup, you heard that right. Cardinal Tagle was appointed to the administration of the patrimony of the Holy See, which is responsible for managing the Vatican's finances. And honestly, this move is a big deal. Pope Francis has been trying to clean up the Vatican's finances, and what better way to do that than by bringing in someone trustworthy? And speaking of trust, Pope Francis also tapped Tagle to be his special envoy for the National Eucharistic Congress in 2024. The Congress is in Indianapolis, and it's all about personal revival. Basically, it's an event where people come together to experience a deeper connection to their faith. The Archbishop of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops even called Tagle's appointment a gift to the event. So yeah, Pope Francis clearly wants Tagle to be the face of something huge. And let's not forget that Cardinal Tagle has also been a key player in Caritas Internationalis, working on global humanitarian efforts, which is totally in line with Pope Francis's vision for a church that's about helping others, especially the most vulnerable. At the end of the day, Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle are working together to create a more compassionate, humble, and globally minded church. They're addressing big issues like financial reform and expanding outreach. Appointment as a global leader. Back in December 2019, Pope Francis made a huge move by appointing Cardinal Tagle, the Archbishop of Manila, as the new head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Now you might be thinking, why is this a big deal? Well, this role basically puts Tagle in charge of spreading the Catholic faith in regions like Africa, Asia, and Oceania, areas that are home to 2/3 of the world's population. That's a lot of ground to cover, folks. The whole point of this appointment is tied to Pope Francis's bigger vision for a church that's missionary-minded, a real go-getter, especially in Asia. Pope Francis has been super clear about wanting to focus there. Tagle's appointment is a signal that the church is shifting gears in terms of its role in the modern world, and he's the perfect guy for the job. Tagle is only the second Asian to ever hold this position. The first was Cardinal Ivan Diaz from India. So, yeah, this isn't just any appointment. It's pretty groundbreaking. Some people might argue that the congregation's history, dating back over 400 years, has a bit of a Rome is the center of the universe vibe. But that's something Pope Francis is keen on changing. He wants the church to be inclusive, with a much broader vision, and Tagle is kind of his secret weapon in that. Now, Tagle's not just a guy with a fancy title. Born in 1957 in Manila to a Catholic family, he's always kept his feet on the ground. And by that I mean he's so not into showing off. Seriously, the guy walks or takes public transport. As Archbishop, he was famous for inviting the poor over for dinner. Talk about being a man of the people. His down-to-earth vibe is one reason why so many folks, both inside and outside the church, just love him. Cardinal Tagle knows how to work a sermon, and his outreach efforts are known worldwide. Plus, he's got some serious pastoral skills. He's the kind of guy who listens before making decisions. In fact, he once said, "Openness comes in pastoral judgments, in concrete situations. No two cases are alike," which sums up his approach to leadership. It's about people, not rules. With this new role, Tagle's influence has just gone global. He's poised to be the guiding light for missionary work all over the world, especially in regions with tons of different cultures and spiritual beliefs. It's all part of Pope Francis's mission to reform the church. And Tagle? Well, he's definitely a key part of that reform, advocating for the poor and showing the world what a modern, compassionate church can look like. Path from Manila to global prominence. Starting out in humble circumstances in Manila, he's grown into a global Catholic superstar, earning himself the title of Asia's Francis. Yep, that's right. He's often compared to Pope Francis for his commitment to a more inclusive and compassionate church. Born on June 21, 1957, Tagle grew up in a solidly Catholic family that wasn't exactly rolling in money, but they made sure he had a strong education and an even stronger moral compass. In his own words, they took care of giving their children an excellent education and passed on moral values. That solid foundation set him up for a life of faith and service. And fun fact, as a kid, he was devoted to the Virgin Mary, leading prayers with his friends in Imus, Cavite. Apparently, he was rewarded with snacks after a solid prayer session. As far as academic achievements go, Tagle is no slouch either. He kicked off his journey by studying philosophy at St. Joseph Seminary in Manila, then went on to get a doctorate in theology at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. He focused on episcopal collegiality and Pope Paul VI's influence, making sure he was extra ready for his future roles as a professor and member of the International Theological Commission. But here's the kicker. Tagle's whole vibe is humble. When he was Bishop of Imus and later Archbishop of Manila, he wasn't about the flashy lifestyle. In fact, he's famously known for ditching the fancy car for walking or taking public transportation, and he even invited beggars to eat with him. Like, who else is doing that? His unpretentious attitude earned him major respect, and people started calling him a pastor of the people. His sermons are filled with so much empathy and wisdom, and you can really see how he connects with people from all walks of life. And as for his leadership style, well, it's all about listening and inclusivity, something he shares with Pope Francis. Even when people told him he wasn't strong enough or didn't condemn enough, Tagle stayed true to his approach. In his own words, "Many told me that I'm not strong, that I don't condemn enough." But he found comfort in Pope Francis's example, saying, "Pope Francis's example helped resolve my doubts." His focus is always on pastoral care, not rigid rules, because, let's be real, no two situations are ever exactly the same. Since 2019, when Pope Francis tapped him to be the prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, Tagle's influence has reached even further. But despite his growing global role, he's still the same humble guy at heart, deeply faithful, fiercely protective of the vulnerable, and completely committed to spreading love and compassion. His legacy as a reformer grounded in faith continues to inspire millions around the world. Leading humanitarian efforts. Cardinal Tagle was the big boss of Caritas Internationalis. From May 2015 to November 2022, this guy didn't just lead the world's second-largest Catholic humanitarian organization, he made it his personal mission to spread love, service, and unity. If you've ever scrolled through his speeches, you know he's all about bringing people together. Like during the 22nd General Assembly in May 2023, he reminded everyone, "We, as human and Christian communities, are all to love and serve." But oh boy, things got complicated in November 2022 when Pope Francis decided to shake things up by dissolving the Caritas leadership, including Tagle's role. The Vatican said this was about deficiencies in management and procedures, which sounds super formal. But some folks were like, wait, what? Critics, including former CI Secretary General Meshel Roy, felt it was a bit of an overreaction. According to Roy, it seemed more like a Vatican power move to take tighter control of Caritas than anything else. He even hinted that Tagle's leadership got caught in the crossfire. Now let's give credit where it's due. Tagle handled the whole thing like an absolute champ. Instead of kicking up a fuss, he called it a call to walk humbly with God and undergo a process of discernment. This kind of grace under pressure is so him. Meshel Roy even pointed out how Tagle's quiet humility and deep respect for everyone made him a standout leader. During his time at Caritas, Tagle balanced the tricky task of leading a confederation with both civil and church identities. But then came the Vatican's 2023 power play, revising statutes just before the General Assembly to centralize authority under their dicastery for promoting integral human development. For Caritas, this wasn't just a new set of rules, it was a whole vibe shift. Roy wasn't having it, saying it messed with the organization's independence and disrupted the delicate balance between northern donor-heavy members and the rising influence of southern members. Talk about a curveball. Still, Tagle's time at Caritas wasn't defined by the drama. His legacy is pure hope and compassion. He steered the ship through some stormy seas, always focusing on collaboration and standing up for the marginalized. At the General Assembly, his words hit home. This coming together is really an event of a family, brought together by our common faith, common hope, and common love service. Sure, the end of his presidency marked a big shift, but the values he championed, respect, unity, and love, are still very much alive. Church for the marginalized communities. Picture this: two religious leaders standing up for the underdog, calling out injustice, and telling the church to get its hands dirty in the name of compassion. If that's not bold, I don't know what is. Pope Francis took the stage for the World Day of the Poor, and let me tell you, he did not hold back. He basically said Christianity isn't some fluffy feel-good club where people can just coast along. Nope, he said, Christian hope needs Christians who do not look the other way. He's asking everyone to actually do something, like help fight systemic injustice and inequality. And in case anyone missed the memo, he dropped the mic with this: let us not forget the poor. Over at St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis turned faith into action with a massive outreach, free medical care in St. Peter's Square, and a big feast for over 1,300 folks in need. That's faith in action, my friends. As he said, we are the ones that must make his grace shine forth through lives steeped in compassion. Enter Cardinal Tagle. If Pope Francis is the main act, Cardinal Tagle is the perfect encore. At the Lambeth Conference, he took a page out of the same book, championing a church that's a spiritual home for everyone, especially people who've been pushed to society's margins, like migrants and refugees. He made it clear, compassion and hospitality are part of the Christian vocation. Let's not forget, this new direction hasn't been everyone's cup of tea. Some traditionalist groups aren't thrilled. They've taken issue with all this talk of reform and inclusivity, claiming it waters down the faith. Pope Francis has clapped back in his own way, though, reminding folks that the heart of Christianity isn't about rigid rules. It's about living out Christ's mission. Or, as he put it, Christian faith must generate in us a mysticism with open eyes, not a spirituality that flees from the world. Meanwhile, Cardinal Tagle is over here dismantling the idea of cultural superiority and pushing for a church that learns from diverse communities. He's got this charming humility thing going on, saying, we can learn from each other greatly by humbly observing one another. And he's quick to point out how Jesus didn't stick to the in crowd. He hung out with outsiders and made them feel seen. Traditionalists are bemoaning what they see as a church losing its doctrinal edge, while others are rallying behind Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle, calling them trailblazers for justice and compassion. The debates are fiery, but honestly, isn't it refreshing to see faith leaders making headlines for standing up for something so unshakably good? At the end of the day, these two are on a mission to make the church a force for real change. Sure, they're ruffling feathers, but isn't that what prophets are supposed to do? As Pope Francis so beautifully summed it up, the reality is that we become the Church of Jesus to the extent that we serve the poor. Love it or hate it, you've got to respect it. Unseen power struggles in the Vatican. Cardinal Tagle has officially leveled up to Cardinal Bishop, the top tier in the Catholic Church's College of Cardinals. And let me tell you, this isn't just a casual promotion. Nope, this is all tied up in the ongoing tug-of-war within the Vatican. It's reformists versus conservatives, with Pope Francis stirring the pot and making moves that some folks are calling revolutionary. The announcement came just a few months after Cardinal Tagle swapped his Manila digs for a seat in Rome to head the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Did I mention he's 62, the youngest of the 11 cardinal bishops, and the only Asian in the group? Talk about a standout resume. Now, being a cardinal bishop isn't just a fancy title. These guys are like the Pope's inner circle. They advise him on major church issues and oversee the coordination of 223 cardinals worldwide. Out of those, 122 are electors who get to cast their vote in the next papal conclave. No pressure, right? But here's the kicker. With this promotion, some folks are already whispering that Cardinal Tagle could be papabile, a possible future pope. Don't let that go to your head, though. Cardinal Tagle's too busy rolling up his sleeves and running humanitarian projects as president of Caritas Internationalis to indulge in power fantasies. The man's still all about alai capua, or serving others, keeping his focus on real-world issues while juggling his Vatican duties. But let's get real for a second. This move wasn't made in a vacuum. Pope Francis is clearly doubling down on his vision of a poor church for the poor. Cardinal Tagle's rise fits perfectly with the Pope's mission to shake up what some critics call the Vatican's crusty old bureaucracy. Catholic journalist Sandro Magister has been known to call out the Vatican for its cliques of self-enclosed groups of bureaucrats who resist accountability. Pope Francis, though, isn't here for that kind of clericalism. The Bishop of the Church is a humble and meek servant, not a prince, he said back in 2018. Some armchair analysts are claiming this could signal a major power shift in the Vatican. One political commentator even suggested that Cardinal Tagle's new department might outshine the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the former stomping grounds of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. If that happens, it's game on in the Vatican power rankings. The drama isn't new, though. Remember Vatican II? That council straight up rejected the idea of a pyramid-like church hierarchy. Instead, it emphasized service over status, a vibe Pope Francis has been championing ever since. He even told bishops to steer clear of becoming airport bishops, always flying around and never actually being present with their people. Of course, not everyone's thrilled. Conservatives within the church are side-eyeing these reforms, seeing them as a challenge to age-old traditions. But hey, it's not just the Catholic Church dealing with this tug-of-war. Across other faith traditions, there's a similar push and pull between those wanting to hold on to the old ways and those eager to adapt. Even Yoram Hazony, an Orthodox Jewish scholar, has been making waves with his call for a revival of traditional values, a sentiment that's hitting home for a lot of conservatives. Progressive leader in challenging times. Cardinal Tagle is turning heads with his progressive leadership. And honestly, he's got a style that's both refreshing and, well, a little controversial. If you're looking for someone who's ready to shake things up in the church, Cardinal Tagle is your guy. He's not just pushing for change, he's practically dragging the church into the present day, much to the dismay of some of the more traditionalists who'd rather stay stuck in the past. Now, why is he so fascinating? For starters, People like to call him the Asian Francis. He and Pope Francis share a lot of similar views on faith, compassion, and serving the poor. But while Pope Francis's message has gained some traction, Cardinal Tagle is running with it and making a name for himself in the process. Cardinal Tagle is all about inclusivity, tackling issues like poverty and climate change. And let's face it, he's not the type to tiptoe around uncomfortable topics. He's the kind of leader who says that if you want to make a difference, you need to dirty your hands with the reality of things as they are. As president of Caritas Internationalis, Cardinal Tagle's leadership has been a game changer, focusing on global humanitarian efforts and advocating for practical solutions to the world's most pressing issues. This is where things get heated. Critics have accused him of making the church a little too political at times. During his time as Archbishop of Manila, some of his homilies leaned into political issues, particularly around former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. He was accused of fueling political division, but Cardinal Tagle wasn't backing down. His style, bold, action-driven, and let's be real, sometimes a little too much for those who want the church to stay far away from politics. But the real kicker? His stance on inclusivity. Cardinal Tagle has made it clear that the church should be a spiritual home for everyone, including LGBTQ+ individuals, unwed mothers, and divorced Catholics. And while his approach lines up with Pope Francis's calls for dialogue and openness, this has sparked some serious backlash within the church. Traditionalists, in particular, have been pretty vocal in their opposition, arguing that it goes against Catholic teachings. It's one thing to preach love and kindness, but it's another to invite in groups that some believe the church should remain distant from. This has made Cardinal Tagle's progressive leadership a point of real contention. The thing is, Cardinal Tagle is not just about talking the talk. He's all about walking the walk, which is what makes his approach so different. He isn't afraid to speak up for the marginalized or make tough calls about the church's role in society. But when you stir the pot like that, you're going to get some heat. His message is loud and clear. Faith should be practical, not just theoretical. And the world's most vulnerable deserve not only our compassion, but also our action. For some, this makes Cardinal Tagle the perfect representative of a modern church. For others, though, he's a little too radical, and they wish he'd dial it back and stick more to tradition. As the debate rages on, one thing's for sure. Cardinal Tagle's vision for the church is one that embraces inclusivity and social justice, even if it ruffles a few feathers along the way. But hey, real change is never easy, right? So while traditionalists might continue to push back against his reforms, Cardinal Tagle is not backing down anytime soon. In fact, it looks like he's all in on shaking things up, and he's got the backing of people who want a church that's relevant in today's world. And as for the critics, let's just say he's not worried about keeping everyone happy. He's focused on making sure the church's values match up with the real world. Diplomatic counterpart. Both Cardinal Tagle and Cardinal Pietro Parolin are heavy hitters in Pope Francis's inner circle, but their styles couldn't be more different. On one hand, you've got Cardinal Tagle, nicknamed the Asian Francis, for his progressive reformist vibe that mirrors Pope Francis's focus on inclusivity, humility, and serving the poor. On the other hand, there's Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State, who's all about tradition, diplomacy, and keeping the ship steady. Cardinal Tagle is all about compassion and action. He's the guy who believes you've got to dirty one's hands with the reality of things as they are, which sounds pretty bold for a cardinal, right? He's focused on real issues like poverty, climate change, and humanitarian crises, and his time leading Caritas Internationalis proves it. Under his watch, Caritas championed global campaigns against hunger and supported marginalized communities. But it hasn't been all smooth sailing for Cardinal Tagle. Remember when those headlines went wild about him being sacked from Caritas? Turns out those rumors were way off. Not only was Cardinal Tagle not ousted, but he was also front and center, managing the leadership transition and reinforcing his role as a key ally in Pope Francis's reform agenda. If Cardinal Tagle is about rolling up his sleeves, Parolin's about playing the long game. He's the brains behind the Vatican's geopolitical moves, like the 2018 China-Vatican agreement on bishop appointments. While it's a tricky deal, critics say it hasn't done enough to protect Chinese Catholics. Parolin defended it, saying it was about appointing good and worthy pastors while navigating the particular conditions of China. He's the guy you call when delicate diplomacy is needed, even if it ruffles feathers. Here's where it gets interesting. Their styles clashed most visibly over this China deal. Cardinal Tagle focused on the agreement's goal of unity and acknowledged the struggles of Chinese Catholics, emphasizing the need to stay engaged. Meanwhile, Parolin leaned on historical precedents and the importance of balancing church needs with state cooperation. Cardinal Tagle is about immediate human impact. Parolin's about preserving relationships and institutions. This dynamic has people speculating about the Church's future. With Pope Francis not so subtly passing the torch, folks are wondering if Cardinal Tagle's progressive energy or Parolin's steady hand will lead the way. At its core, this isn't just about two cardinals, it's about the Church itself. Will it lean into modernization, reaching out to marginalized communities, or will it stick with tradition, relying on its diplomatic roots? One thing's for sure, whether it's Cardinal Tagle's reformist spark or Parolin's calculated moves, the decisions made will echo through the Church for decades. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about this video? If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Check out the 2 videos on screen for more content, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss any future updates.